Dragons! There's dragons everywhere in One Piece. Kaido's a dragon, Momo's a dragon, Loki's now a dragon. But what if there's one more dragon devil fruit that we've actually been overlooking all this time? Because with dragons being all the rage right now, and Luffy definitely needing some power-ups before the end of the series if he's gonna take on the Gorosei, Imu, or even just come close to what apparently is Loki's crazy power level, a very weird, but as you will hopefully agree by the end of this video, relevant question must be asked at this point. Is Luffy also gonna turn into a big dragon? Alright, I admit very weird question, but let me explain here, because based on the mural, I think that the original Nika might have been a dragon. We talked about this when the mural came out. In fact, I made a whole video already about how Nika was probably a dragon too, and with Loki's draconic transformation, I think that's even more true at this point in the story. I mean, you can't tell me it's a coincidence that both Kaido and Loki have dragon fruits and horns and thought that they would be the next Joy Boy and have the Sun God powers. I mean, Luffy might just be in his hybrid form right now because, I mean, really doesn't feel like much of a transformation in line with many other zones and mythical zones. Even looking at someone like Sengoku, who has a human fruit, that guy's transformation looks nothing like himself really. And by that I mean he turns solid gold and a little bit chubby. Now, Luffy still has a lot to master obviously with Gear 5 and the Nika fruit, and I think part of that might be turning into a white dragon counterpart to Loki's black dragon, but you know, with a little bit more of a Toon Force vibe, you know, like a Toon Dragon. But more on the potential goofiest dragon in manga history a little bit later, because first I want to establish why I even think that Luffy Dragon Mode is a real possibility in the story and not just something that sounds cool, even though it does sound cool too, I hope you admit. But because I'm just expecting that this sounds kind of insane to you, even for my standards, I'm gonna need you to trust me for a moment and let me set this up, because I really think there is a there here. A there here? A there there? Anyways, ever since I first broke down the Elbaf mural, our toxic ex-wife that keeps popping up every video, I've been speculating that one specific character depicted is actually Nika, because the Sun God must be the one that, according to the Harley text, is doing battle with the Hellflame Serpent. It's probably this big dragon. That's gotta be Nika, right? But chapter 1174 now threw a very big wrench into this very idea when Loki just turned into, well, pretty much that dragon. A black, big dragon that's the size of the entire tree, which is super weird because like a Loki looking guy is right over here in the mural too, right by Joy Boy in Gear 5 form. That's probably Loki or Loki's ancestor during the Void Century, right? But then what is this dragon at the top of the tree? Well, what if this is also Nika? I mean, this could go back to something I've been talking about ever since the start of Elbaf really, because I think there might be two sun gods who history have conflated into a single version of Nika with two different aspects. One very, light, chaotic, kind of, liberating everyone, and the other being a force of destruction. I mean, remember the beginning of the arc, which was Sun God Central? Road was doing his Sun God cosplay, then in Loki's first appearance, he declared that he was the Sun God who will destroy the world, and now I think it actually kind of makes perfect sense why Loki would think that he's Nika, because if he's looking at that very same mural his entire life that we were looking at and seeing the giant black dragon attack the Hellflame Serpent, and then of course assuming that that dragon is actually Nika, and then he also eats a legendary devil fruit that's been protected by the entire country that turns him into that exact dragon, well, yeah, I'd probably think that I'm the Sun God too at that point. I mean, in fact, I do think that I am the Sun God. That's just Mario. That was so bad. In retrospect, this also totally clears something up about Kaido, as I mentioned earlier, because the world's strongest creature who just got dethroned by the world's strongest Loki, by the way, crazy. This dude wanted to be Joy Boy so bad, but realized that it was probably just not him. He did know that Joy Boy would probably appear in Wano eventually. He set up shop there and even planned to plunge the world into the final war, possibly in an attempt to actually force the next Joy Boy out into existence. But as he kind of hoped, the next Joy Boy then came right to him, with Kaido knowing that if anyone in the world could actually defeat him, it would be be the true next Joy Boy. But again, since Kaido also had a dragon fruit, and please don't start with the fish stuff, that could also play into Kaido's Joy Boy obsession and King thinking originally that he could be the next Joy Boy. I mean, this is now 2 cases where a dragon fruit user is mistaken for the next incarnation of Nika, which, you know, isn't a lot, but it's kind of weird that it happened twice. But with all of this Nika confusion, with everyone and their mom thinking that they're Nika, it makes a big case that there could have been 2 Nikas during the first world, or at the very least, 2 Nika fruits in the second world, based on differing tales of Nika, you know, from the first world. Throughout the arc, giants speak in so many facets of the sun gods. The most common ones we see are a liberator and a destroyer, but in chapter 1138, the same chapter that also dropped the mural, Saul and Ripley seem to indicate that there are even more interpretations of Nika throughout Elbaf and even the rest of the One Piece world. And I know we're getting repetitive, but I'm gonna hammer this home even more with another rhetorical question here. Are these different aspects of the same character, or are there literally multiple Nikas? What would be truly wild to me is if it turned out that there are 2 Nika fruits, Luffy having the Hito no Mi model Nika, while Loki has the Ryu no Mi, so the dragon fruit model Nika too. Maybe these 2 facets of Nika were dreamed up into fruits, with one being a fun cartoon man, and the other one being the biggest, scariest dragon of destruction that brings the end of the world in the entire story. Now, I'll be honest, this is an even crazier idea though, and almost certainly is gonna get debunked pretty soon, as we're gonna get Loki's devil fruit name hopefully in the next few chapters. Unless I somehow call it on this long shot guess here, in which case, heck yeah, dude. I mean, you heard it here first. I guess let me know in the comments how right or wrong this guess was by the time that we actually know. Anyways, could it just be a huge misunderstanding maybe then, and the real Nika is riding on the big black dragon in the mural, just like Luffy's doing with Loki right now, and we just never noticed because, you know, there's a lot of text over it. Editors, can we zoom in on the dragon, please? Oh, there he is. Not sure how I missed that one, but real talk for a moment. Could it be that this mural dragon and Nika were actually homies, just like Luffy and Loki seem to be right now, but then they got kind of conflated into one figure throughout history? After all, we shouldn't forget that most of the world's history has been completely wiped, so it's pretty easy to imagine that the picture we're getting is a somewhat distorted version of what actually happened. And that truth of what actually happened, I've kind of said it before, and I'm gonna say it again, Nika's totally a dragon man. Like, I've actually been working on a theory in the background about Joy Boy's allies and the Great Kingdom, and that's gonna end up being like a huge mega theory. It's been a lot of fun rereading the story in Japanese, you know, looking at things from all the new perspectives that we've now gotten with the mural and Vegapunk's speech, and also just there's so much stuff hidden in the Japanese version of the story that I never noticed, like little nuances. Like, fun fact, I never even realized that the Sea Kings during Fishman Island, when they're talking, specifically mention the Galela tribe in the manga in Japanese, which is kind of crazy. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. It's not super relevant for this video specifically, so here's the snippet that we actually care about. Have you ever noticed that practically all of the Joy Boy allied nations have some kind of connection to dragons or serpents? And now's probably also a good time to note that in a lot of mythology, dragons and serpents are intertwined and often interchangeable. Point is, obviously, now Elbaf has the dragon on its mural, the kids fear the Nidhogger so much that Killingham made an MMA out of it, and now we know that their literal national treasure devil fruit is also a big-ass dragon. But this is also kind of true for almost all of the nations that we know used to be allied with Joy Boy too. I mean, do I even need to explain Wano, right? We've got Kaido and Momo both rocking dragon fruits, but they've also just got dragon statues lying around, like the big one that Ace damaged on Onigashima after meeting Yamato. Ooh, these two are also fun ones. When I was reading Alabasta, I found this one in the bathhouse, which is just a Japanese dragon in a random panel that Oda threw in there. But there are also these totally interesting depictions of giant serpents among the hieroglyphs in the Tomb of the Kings that, specifically, Oda keeps drawing Cobra in front of again and again and again. And let's also not forget that Neptune's kingdom in Fishman Island is literally called the Ryugu Kingdom, and for my non-Japanese speakers out there, Ryugyu means Dragon Palace, not the fish palace, but the Dragon Palace. How do you feel about that one, Kaido? And literally, the first time we ever heard the names of the four gods was, of course, in the Shandora flashback when we saw the Shandians worshipping the Kashigami, a giant serpent who was their literal god and the embodiment that they were kind of worshipping in physical form. Now, at this point, I don't even think it's too much of a stretch to suggest that all of the four gods might have been dragons or serpents originally, or at least taken that form in some way, shape, or form. Honestly, if the sun god was a dragon, maybe the others could be too. I mean, the Calm Belt is full of these terrifying sea leviathans, all commanded by Poseidon, the name of the Greek sea god. Maybe the original Poseidon was a full-on dragon, water dragon, before the power was reincarnated into mermaids later down the line, and there is so much mythology about the sea dragon and his sea dragon palace in Japan, which is all connected to Fishman Island too. I mean, come on. What's a mermaid but a half dragon, half person, right? Just look at the scales. And I don't know, maybe I've just been reading the Harley text wrong altogether the entire time, and the Hellflame Serpent is somehow one of the four gods and not just the Earth god's best bro or accessory. At this point, I don't know, man, it's kind of dragons all the way down. We've always known that they were very important, and especially if Imo and Co were trying to replace the previous kings and gods of the world, them calling themselves celestial dragons makes a lot of sense if the previous literal gods of the One Piece world were all dragons too. So even though the celestial dragons are the main bad guys of the entire series, you're absolutely right for pointing that out, in my own headcanon, which is also always absolutely right without fail, that would be nice. Maurizua, I think, might have been stolen from the Great Kingdom or an even older kingdom dating back to the First World, maybe being held by the Lunarians or these original gods by Imu. We already know that the Lunarians used to live up on the Red Line, and they worshipped Joy Boy or Nika as well. So I think that Imu might have taken the Lunarians home, and then they declared themselves these new gods. And what are the gods? That's right, dragons. And there you go. We still got the celestial dragons stealing that draconic glory while hiding the real history of the real dragons, wiping it clean, except when they're paying Vegapunk to try and make a real-life dragon on Punk Hazard, which is even more proof that dragons were A, real in One Piece, and B, very, very, very important. Now, of course, you might say we already knew that they were real because Ryuma's whole claim to fame is that he slayed one back in the days. The reason there are so many dragon-based devil fruits are probably because there used to be many real dragons that they were all based on. And that now brings me all the way back to the true Nika reincarnation. Luffy, who by the way I still haven't mentioned in this video properly yet, is the son of Dragon again. It's dragons all the way down. And it kind of does seem like there's more to Luffy's fruit than we're seeing at this point. I mean, first off, just because of how shonen anime works, he can't get his last big power-up several arcs before the end of the series. We kind of know that Gear 5 is strong, but not absolutely broken and at the level he needs it to be right now. He also just doesn't even really understand, or by the way, care what his fruit actually is or does, covering his ears and going la 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 every time someone tries to explain to him, you know, some One Piece history or anything that's relevant really. But if you're not like Luffy and love having One Piece history explained to you and you're not gonna stick your hands into your ears, you can get even more One Piece content over on the Ohara Patreon, where we've got bonus videos, early chapter reactions, downloadable artwork, and a free weekly newsletter. If you don't want to support the channel, but still want to get something for free, go check it out, link in the description. But going back to the video, also just like, Luffy's fruit is not really how zone fruits are supposed to work, right? Like, we've talked about this before on the channel. For a standard zone fruit, you've got your base form, your hybrid form, and your animal form, but we can't really judge the Nika fruit based on that standard because it's a mythical zone fruit. But then again, all the other mythical zone fruits we've seen also kind of follow that same pattern. I mean, let's even go with the other human fruits. My chubby golden boy Sengoku transforms into a whole giant golden Buddha and, presumably at least, has also a, hybrid form that we haven't seen yet. Or is that his hybrid form? Huh. Interesting. Luffy, on the other hand, doesn't transform as much as he, I guess, palette swaps. Like, don't get me wrong, the powers are unreal, and I absolutely love Gear 5, but it's definitely less of a transformation than pretty much any other zone fruit we've seen in existence. But you know what would be a full-on transformation? That would be Dragon Luffy. Like, imagine if Luffy is in Gear 5 right now, just still being himself. He doesn't know he has a zone fruit, so he might not even be trying to transform. It might just be him having awakened his devil fruit, but, you know, just being in his base form, basically, and using the properties of the mythical zone. He might still have a hybrid and a full transformation to go with. And honestly, the possibilities for a transformation like this would be kind of endless. Like, would that be an Eastern dragon, like Kaido style? A Western dragon, like Loki? I would love something like we have in one of the thumbnails. Again, we are A/B testing these, so who knows which one you're seeing. But this one, the Rayquaza-inspired one, I think looks pretty sick. I'd be very down for something like that, or maybe something else that's a little bit more anime fantasy style. I mean, I'm trying to think, what's a cool sun god dragon? Ra from Yu-Gi-Oh! Like that, but with a straw hat. Kinda goes pretty hard. Probably not what's gonna happen, but you know, you see the vision, hopefully. Now, funnily enough, while doing a little bit more mythological research recently, like I always do, actually, like genuinely for fun, that's what I read at night, I did find this interesting Chinese dragon called the Zulong. It's a solar or, you know, light-bringing dragon, so it has pretty big sun god vibes, and its name kind of made me raise my eyebrows a little bit too, because Zulong to me sounds pretty similar to Sulong, and the Mink Sulong transformation, you know, they do look a ton like Gear 5 Luffy with the white fur and red eyes and everything. But if Luffy does have a dragon form, I really hope it doesn't look like Zulong, since he's just like a big snake with the face of a normal man, which, I mean, this is something I could totally see Luffy doing with Toon Force, or just Oda being like very goofy with Luffy's dragon's transformation. But if, you know, if Loki gets this and Kaido gets this, I think Luffy can get something a little bit cooler. And as much as I want to imagine a badass white dragon that matches Loki's black one, representing liberation and destruction, or even yin and yang, whatever you want it to be, whatever Luffy's potential dragon form might be, it's gonna probably be pretty silly if Oda goes that direction, right? Because Gear 5 is only limited by Luffy's own imagination, and if he believes that he can turn into a dragon, honestly, what's gonna stop him? Like, as far as we know, he could just do that either way, even if that's not part of his devil fruit. If Luffy imagines it, he might just do it anyway. So maybe he'll get inspired by his big new best friend and go dragon mode, just in order to fight against the eldritch horror that is Imu. And just like Loki seems to be able to bypass the Holy Knight's immortality with his devil fruit, Luffy's powers are probably a solid counter for Imu as well, since Imu was completely shook by his reaction to feeling Joy Boy's haki, or Loki defeating Heralds. So maybe Luffy copying Loki could just copy these abilities too, because again, Luffy's imagination, so the only way to beat the like fake celestial dragons might just be with the real dragons, the real ancient gods. But also with Loki stepping up to Imu right now, it kind of makes you wonder what Imu's hiding if they manage to actually win the war against Joy Boy and maybe even Nika all those centuries and millennia ago. But I actually have an idea of how exactly Imu seized control of the Abyss during the war that was the Void Century. You can watch that right here. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Thanks so much to our fantastic Patreons. It really means a lot that you support the channel. I really, really appreciate it. Again, if you haven't checked it out, please do that, and I will hopefully see you in the next video.